The Soldier Who Died Twice. I mean, what a title, right? This is the story of a guy who is officially declared dead, but his war was far from over. In fact, he was about to go on and fight a whole other one.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's June 10th, 1944. The world is still reeling from the D-Day landings just a few days earlier. And in all that chaos, a telegram from the U.S. Army makes its way to a family in Michigan. And, it's the kind of news every family back home dreaded. Their son, Sergeant Joseph Burley, was officially declared
killed in action. And just like that, as far as the world was concerned, his story was over. His family mourned, they held a funeral mass. His name joined the long, tragic list of heroes who gave their lives to liberate France.
But what if he wasn't? What if the official record, the telegram, all of it was completely wrong? And what if the real story was something so wild, so brutal, and so unbelievably heroic, it sounds like something straight out of a movie?
All right, so let's get into it. How on earth does a soldier become a ghost? Well, for Joseph Burley, it all kicked off with what has to be one of the riskiest jumps in military history.
Okay, get this. Burley's jump into Normandy was from just 360 feet. The normal altitude is like 1,200 feet. He lands totally alone, completely cut off from his unit. Now, most guys would hide, right? Not Burley. He spends the next 3 days running around on his own, blowing stuff up, just causing chaos for the Germans. Eventually, though, his luck runs out and he gets captured. And here, this is the twist that changes everything. The Germans take his dog tags and give them to an infiltrator, a spy. And when that guy gets killed, the U.S. Army finds the body, sees the tags, and, well, they declare Joseph Burley dead. Except he wasn't. He was alive, and his nightmare was really just getting started.
So for the next 7 months, Burley isn't a paratrooper anymore. He's a prisoner of war. And you have to understand, the Nazi prison system had this brutal rule of thumb. The further east they sent you, the worse things got.
He was held in seven different prison camps. Each one dragged him deeper and deeper into the crumbling German Reich. And each one was a step closer to hell. But here's the thing about Burley. He never stopped being a soldier. In every single camp, he was a massive headache for the guards, always looking for a way out, always trying to get back into the fight.
I mean, look at this journey. He tries to escape in July, gets caught, and they ship him further east. He tries again in October, gets caught in Berlin, of all places, and they hand him over to the Gestapo. He somehow survives that, so they send him to this enormous POW camp, Stalag 3C, way out in Poland. And it's there, in the dead of winter, he hears something on the horizon, artillery, Soviet guns. He makes a decision. His third escape won't be west, it'll be east.
So about that run-in with the Gestapo. To them, he wasn't a POW protected by the Geneva Convention. Nope. To them, he was a spy. And for 10 straight days, they put him through absolute hell. They stripped him, beat him, dislocated both of his shoulders, starved him, and even staged mock executions. He was literally minutes away from being put in front of a real firing squad when the regular German army finally stepped in and confirmed he was a legitimate POW. You'd think an experience like that would break a man. For Burley, it just filled him with a burning, white-hot rage. So he makes his third escape. For 2 weeks, he's trekking through the frozen Polish wilderness, heading for the sound of those guns. And he finally finds them. He finds the Soviets. But this is where the story goes from a crazy survival tale to something absolutely unprecedented.
He'd gone through all of that just to get back to the war, but the Soviets had their own rules. Official policy was to send any Allied POWs they found straight to the rear, back to Moscow, to sit the rest of the war out. Burley was having none of it. He flat out refused. He didn't want to ride home. He wanted a rifle. He wanted payback. And this argument between a stubborn American and some Soviet officers gets the attention of the battalion's commander.
And the commander wasn't just anybody. It was Alexandra Samusenko, the only female tank commander in the entire 1st Guards Tank Army, an absolute legend. She had seen the very worst the Eastern Front had to offer. She'd lost her husband, her entire family, to the Germans. So when she heard this American story, his torture, his escapes, she didn't see a problem to be shipped off. She saw a kindred spirit. She understood revenge.
And just like that, Sergeant Joseph Burley of the American 101st Airborne becomes a soldier in the Soviet Red Army. They hand him a PPSH-41 submachine gun, the one with the round drum magazine, and assign him to a tank crew. And here's the perfect, ironic twist. The tank he's assigned to
It's an American-made Sherman given to the Soviets as part of the Lend-Lease program. His new Russian comrades, they couldn't care less that he was American. All they cared about was that he wanted to fight. They even gave him a nickname, They're American.
So Burgelli starts fighting with them, pushing west with the Red Army's massive offensive. And then his new battalion gets their next set of orders. And this is where the story hits a climax that is, I'm not kidding, one of the most unbelievable moments of the entire Second World War.
The orders are to attack a big German installation, a large POW camp, actually, holding thousands of Allied prisoners. For the Soviet tank crew, it's just another target on the map. But for Joseph Burley, sitting in that Sherman tank, it was a whole lot more personal.
Because the target was Stalag 3C, the exact same camp he had just escaped from only 3 weeks earlier. The prisoner who snuck out in the dead of night was about to come crashing back through the front gate as a liberator.
I mean, can you just picture that for a second? The Soviet tanks smash through the fences. The prisoners, starving and weak, come pouring out. And standing on one of those tanks is a face they recognize. An American face. A guy they all thought was dead, killed trying to escape. Only now he's wearing a Soviet uniform and holding a Russian gun. They literally thought they were seeing a ghost. His ghost.
Just a few days after that incredible, impossible moment of liberation, Burley's combat luck finally ran out. A German Stuka dive bomber attacks, and shrapnel basically shatters his leg. His fighting days were finally truly over. But his story? Oh, it was far from finished.
Okay, so now he's wounded, deep behind Soviet lines, and he's got a brand new problem. How in the world does he convince the United States of America that he's not actually dead?
His trip home was just as wild as the rest of his story. First, his tale somehow makes its way all the way up to the legendary Soviet Marshal Zhukov, the guy who took Berlin. And Zhukov himself signs off on his travel papers. So Burley gets to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, right? He walks in, wearing a Soviet uniform, and tries to explain that he's an American sergeant who's officially listed as killed in action. What do you think they do? They detain him as a spy, of course. It wasn't until they could match his fingerprints with his old army records that they finally believed him and finally changed his status from dead back to alive.
When all was said and done, Burley's legacy is just one of a kind. Think about it. He's believed to be the only soldier in history to get combat medals from both the United States and the Soviet Union for fighting in the same war. I mean, that's a testament to a guy whose fight was bigger than any one flag. So let's just pause on that image for a moment. It's 1945. Joseph Burley, a wounded American soldier who's supposed to be dead, walks into the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with this absolutely unbelievable story. But that's not where his family's connection to Moscow ends. Because fast forward to 2008, his own son, John Burley, arrives in that very same city. But he's not a lone soldier trying to prove he's alive. No, he arrives as the United States ambassador to Russia. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. What an incredible full circle moment for that family.
You know, it really makes you think, doesn't it? A story this incredible was almost completely lost to history. It just makes you wonder, how many other stories like this are out there? How many other tales of impossible survival and improbable heroism are just sitting in some dusty archive, waiting to be told?